If you think you know what betrayal looks like, wait until you hear how a poor girl thrown out like trash rose to become the richest lady in the city, and made everyone who wronged her kneel. Don't miss a second of this wild revenge journey. Subscribe now for more jaw-dropping twists. When Alina Hart was 10 years old, she learned that love in the wrong household could be sharper than any knife, for the family who claimed to take her in out of kindness, treated her more like a burden than a blessing, calling her a charity case, a nobody, a stray they regretted helping, yet she endured their cruelty with quiet resilience until the night everything shattered, the night when a valuable heirloom vase broke during an argument she wasn't even part of, but somehow they blamed her, calling her unlucky, clumsy, a bad omen, and without hesitation, her adoptive mother shoved her onto the cold driveway in the rain, shouting that she was no longer welcome under their roof, tossing her tiny backpack after her like discarded trash, while Alina stood trembling, soaked and heartbroken, clutching the only thing she had ever owned, a silver locket whose origins she never knew, except that it came from her birth mother who died when Alina was a baby. But as the storm raged, she whispered a promise to herself that one day she'd escape this misery, one day she'd build a life so bright that their cruelty would look pitiful compared to her shine, and with that burning vow she stepped into fate's open jaws, for the world had far bigger plans for her than she ever imagined, because miles away in a towering glass empire sat a billionaire family searching desperately for their long-lost granddaughter, the heiress of the Hart Dominion, one of the wealthiest dynasties in the nation, and fate, with its strange humor, had placed the clue around Alina's neck her entire life in the form of that silver locket engraved with the Hart crest, a crest she never recognized. The next morning, shivering and hungry, Alina dragged herself to school ashamed that she had nowhere to go, and though whispers followed her, she kept her eyes down, refusing to let her humiliation crack her spirit, until a black limousine rolled to a stop outside the gates and two elegant figures stepped out, a regal white-haired woman with diamond-cold eyes and a tall, intimidating man in a crisp suit. Everyone turned to stare as they walked directly to Alina, and the woman's voice quivered with emotion as she softly said, "My dear, we finally found you," and before she could react, they showed her the matching locket and explained everything, that her mother was the original Hart heiress who died tragically, that Alina was the true successor to the massive Hart fortune, and that she had been lost due to a hospital mix-up years prior. Disbelief paralyzed her as she tried to make sense of the revelation, but when the woman gently embraced her, something no one had done in years, Alina felt something break inside, the long frozen part of her heart melting into warmth. By sunset, she was inside a grand mansion filled with servants, marble floors, silk curtains, and every comfort she had dreamed of, and though the sudden shift overwhelmed her, her grandparents assured her that she belonged there, that she was home at last, and for the first time she slept in a soft bed feeling safe. But destiny wasn't finished, because as news spread across the city, the same prejudiced family that kicked her out felt the shock like a slap, realizing the worthless girl they abandoned was now the richest young lady in the country. The adoptive mother nearly fainted when her neighbors whispered about how cruel she had been. The adoptive father cursed their own stupidity, and the children who once mocked Alina for being poor now trembled imagining the consequences. When they tried to contact her soaked in fake tears, begging to explain the misunderstanding, Alina ignored their calls, but not because she wanted peace. No, she wanted perfect revenge, a revenge served with elegance and icy calmness, revenge that would make them crumble. Months later, fully transformed into a confident young heiress with designer clothes, flawless posture, and a gaze that could slice through lies, Alina returned to her former street not out of affection but to reclaim the last pieces of her past, arriving in a long black limousine that made the entire neighborhood peek from their windows. The prejudiced family rushed outside pretending to be thrilled, acting as if they always loved her, showering her with fake smiles and louder flattery than a politician's speech. But Alina merely raised a hand to silence them and said coldly, "You didn't lose me, you threw me away," watching their faces crumble as something darker gleamed in her eyes. Then she presented them with the lawsuit her lawyers prepared, a case for years of emotional abuse, illegal neglect, and falsification of documents they had signed to gain financial benefit from claiming her as a dependent. The family dropped to their knees, begging, crying, promising to change, but Alina didn't flinch, for she remembered every insult, every time they starved her, every time they called her worthless, and she simply turned away while cameras recorded everything, because her revenge wasn't just legal, it was social devastation. Within days, their reputation burned, their house foreclosed, and their so-called friends vanished like smoke. Meanwhile, Alina used her rising influence to build shelters for abandoned children, ensuring no one else endured what she had, winning the public's love, becoming a symbol of hope, strength, and justice. But fate added another twist. The Heart business empire was under threat by a rival corporation led by a cunning young CEO named Damon Locke, whose methods were ruthless and whose charm hid the sharpest mind in the industry. He underestimated Alina at first, assuming she was just a pampered heiress, but when she confronted him during a negotiation meeting, her strategic brilliance stunned him, forcing him to acknowledge her as an equal and sparking a fierce rivalry charged with dangerous chemistry. Their battles became legendary: economic chess moves, corporate sabotage, intellectual duels, but somewhere in the tension grew an unexpected connection, one that neither of them wanted to admit yet couldn't deny. When a traitor within the Heart company tried to frame Alina to sabotage her rise, Damon was the one who secretly uncovered the conspiracy, confronting the traitor and stepping into the fire to protect her reputation, revealing to Alina that he admired her strength, her resilience, and the steel beneath her softness, but she wasn't ready to trust someone with her heart yet, so she channeled her energy into expanding her empire, proving that her wealth wasn't inherited, it was earned through brilliance, grit, and a soul that refused to break. As months passed, her influence grew to the point that government officials consulted her, business leaders respected her, and newspapers called her the Phoenix Heiress, for rising from ashes to empire. Then came the final twist: an international summit where Alina delivered a powerful speech about rebuilding systems that protected vulnerable children, a speech so moving that even world leaders applauded, and she realized in that moment that her life had transcended revenge, that she had become someone whose existence created real change. Afterward, Damon approached her, not with rivalry in his eyes but admiration, offering a partnership, personal and professional. Yet Alina only smiled and said, "I'll decide my future when I'm ready," walking away with the grace of a queen who knew the world was already in the palm of her hand. Her story became a legend, a reminder that the ones kicked down often rise the highest, that the underestimated can become unstoppable, and that sometimes the greatest revenge is not destroying your enemies, it's becoming everything they said you couldn't be and watching them shatter under the brilliance of your victory.